Good evening, everybody. It is wonderful to be with you here tonight. I did write this sermon. Hi, Ren. I did write this sermon thinking that we would be outside tonight, but I think it is just as appropriate that we are inside all together. And I think my daughter's going to join me for this one. Hi. Do you want to say hi? Okay. So I recently graduated from seminary, Boston University. Go Terriers. And in grad school, in the fall of 2022, my wife and I were preparing to have this one. And so I knew that I needed to take a light semester because I was going to be absent for at least half of it. And luckily, one of my professors allowed me to do a directed study on whatever I wanted. And I said, I want to study the theology of soil. We have some soil fans here. And my professor, ever patient with me, agreed. And I love to hug a tree. And I love bird watching and camping and hiking in the woods. And I love being outside with other living creatures. But I've never been much of a gardener. And for all my time outside, I actually haven't had my hands in the dirt all that much. And for a long time, as far as I could tell, the dirt was mostly just a bunch of broken down rocks and decayed matter and minerals and stuff that kind of facilitated life, but otherwise kind of worth ignoring. And by grad school, I had started to learn that I might be underestimating soil. More and more information was coming out about mycorrhizal fungi that connects trees and other plants through the dirt. And rather than an inert substance that I was glimpsing, that soil might be something much bigger. It might be kind of alive and important. It might actually be the medium on which all life depends. It might be the very clay that we are made of. And that felt like it had some theological weight to it. So I began reading and learning. And eventually I reached that terrifying point on every learner's journey where they've learned just enough to realize they know nothing at all. For instance, one thing that I learned just a bit about is that soil might have precipitated the fall of the Roman Empire. Through unsustainable agricultural practices, the empire used up all its land, arable land, and needed to conquer new areas in order to try to keep up with the demand of a growing and hungry populace, ultimately leading to political and social instability. Cool, I thought. Similarly, it may even have played a role in the expanding practice of slavery in the United States. As white farmers abused the human beings that they enslaved to work the land, they also abused the land itself. With monocultures of tobacco and cotton, thirsty, nutrient-hungry plants drained the soil, and when southern land, once seemingly a farming paradise, began to suffer under the weight of the monocultures, the white plantation owners made the people that they enslaved work even harder, abused them even more to try to get the same amount. And when the soil continued to decline under the weight of that abuse, slave owners needed new territories and new states, new untilled land to expand into, or their business would fall apart. Some historians have even argued that soil was one of the causes that led to the Civil War. When we think of history, we like to think of it as a history of people doing stuff. And yet often that seems to not be true. How much of history has been shaped by disease, by climate? And suddenly, through these studies, I was seeing a whole new lens through which I could understand history, through soil. And when I connected that history to myself and to the modern day, I could start to see it through loam and dirt, through micronutrients and earthworms, through this big thing that might itself be alive. There's this wonderful quote that I found attributed to the radio broadcaster Paul Harvey. You know, and now you know the rest of the story guy. He said, despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact it rains. We, our society, our government, our military, our cities and laws, the internet, this church, all religions, everywhere, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact it rains. And I just kept thinking, how had I missed this? I loved the outside and I loved ecology and nature, and yet somehow I felt like I had become so disconnected from something so vital to life and so vital to my body. Something that connected me with the world and with everyone else. Because I promise that this topic, though it's on soil, is not untimely. These questions are ultimately tied with the news headlines. How we treat the world reflects how we treat each other and ourselves. All theology is psychology, it is said. How we think about the divine, that which is greater than ourselves, says more about us than about any God. So too does how we think about the earth beneath our feet. Do we think of ourselves as a part of it? Separate from it? Is it a part of us? Is she part of it? Could my love for my new daughter also permeate the soil? In his essay, The Body and the Earth, Wendell Berry does not focus on love. Instead, he focuses on the connection of violence and the soil. He writes, violence against one is ultimately violence against all. The willingness to abuse other bodies is the willingness to abuse one's own. To damage the earth is to damage your children. To despise the ground is to despise the fruit. To despise the fruit is to despise the fruit eaters. And I can't help but think of those original fruit eaters, Adam and Eve, made out of clay. For out of it you were taken, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. One of God's punishments for the crime of eating this fruit is that Adam and Eve suddenly feel shame about their bodies. Suddenly they are set against themselves. Oh, okay, you went down? Hi. Suddenly they are set against themselves and therefore set against part of creation. How much harm has come since? How many times have we recreated this original sin of forgetting where we come from, what we are made of, and therefore how we are all intimately connected? Connected to ourselves and connected to everyone else, to everything else. How many times has history repeated this connection and its loss? The connection between the abuse of the earth and the abuse of human beings. In my studies, I learned of a similar connection happening right now between authoritarianism and climate denial, which has a fun term that I learned called petromasculinity, which I liked very much. We're taking the actions that would harm the earth the most, buying the biggest truck, most polluting truck, voting for the most pollution-friendly politicians, is married with a willingness and even an eagerness and identity around harming others. Anti-trans, anti-immigration, anti-women, anti-diversity, and anti-earth. Never mind the 6 inches of topsoil and the rain. To admit that we are all connected to the soil would be to admit that we are not only individuals. Authoritarianism can't have that. It would be to admit that we are connected to the earth and therefore to each other intimately. Petro-masculinity, authoritarianism requires us to only be individuals. In studying soil and the way that it is part of us and that we are part of it, I was able to see the lie of pure individualism, a lie that cannot be maintained because it denies a foundational truth of interconnection. And therefore, I saw why authoritarianism must always fail, eventually. I saw why those fascists, as Woody Guthrie put it, are bound to lose. You want down? You want to go see mommy? No. You want daddy? I know, I love you. What I studied in soil is also what kept me coming back to this faith, though. Because it centered not on hate of the other, but on love of ourselves and each other. This Unitarian universalism. In the theology of the soil, I found a theology of love. One in which kindness towards the other is ultimately kindness towards all. Which showed me how the love that expanded inside of me when I first saw my daughter and later my son was also a love that expanded out to everyone and to all of creation. The love that connected me with the earth, with something larger than myself, and with the divine. And we are not just connected, we are the earth. The bodies that are abused by our systems and killed in the name of profit, that is the earth. And each new birth and each body celebrated and loved, that is also the earth. In our bodies, mine and yours, we are the earth. And yet we have been taught to separate ourselves from it, and so from ourselves and from each other. And I am not suggesting necessarily that everyone has to get their hands in the dirt and get all dirty. Only that this was how I found a foundation to my theology. That didn't just put love at the center, but made it part of the very ground that I walk on. That told me a story of interconnection. That taught me to take all of our accomplishments and all of our failures as a people, as a nation, in stride. Despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact it rains. At a time when those in charge want to emphasize power of nations, of armies, of technology, this story puts all of that in the context of 6 inches of soil and rain. And to me, that story is radical. Do you know where the word radical comes from? That's right, yeah. From the Latin radicalis, which I'm probably mispronouncing, originating from roots. Sorry, roots. And so I think this story asks us and asks me to do radical acts. Start a garden, go for a bike ride, listen to the birds, get your hands dirty, or just go and love ourselves. love each other. And finally, I'm going to invite you to take a practice that I found helpful in my silly little soil study. I asked myself, what small things can I do this week that will heal the small patch of soil that I live on? Plant something, water something, love the people who live there. What can you do to heal the small patch of soil that you live on? Kiss your daughter when she falls. Love yourself on that soil. Love the other people on it. I promise it can heal you too. Thank you. My friends, we are all connected to each other, to the earth, to ourselves. So I invite you, as we will leave tonight for the next week, be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to the earth, for they are all one.